on my time.
We must be late.
We must be late. The
We must
nerve.
be late. We're all
Well,
rabbits. We're
see
in
the
Alice in
way
Wonderland, aren't we?
the way you're saying it that we must be late. It's like you're making an assertion that we need to be late and we can't be
We
on time.
must be. We must be on our way.
We are on our way across like 5 different time zones, maybe a little bit more.
This is true. Well, hey everyone, as we get more people. This is Dan. We have Robin.
Hi.
So glad to be doing these again. It feels just crazy. Only because like we haven't done anything live really into our group since 2020 when we originally met. Um, but we're thrilled to be back.
Sorry, I was just dealing with technical difficulties,
Oh,
but
you
yeah, like we started doing these. We did these a couple of times, a lot of times in 2020, when everyone was home, and we had the idea of, hey, let's get them going again. This was fun to do, and it was also. I feel like this is like going to become a core memory for me when I think back on what was I doing during lockdown in 2020. Well, we were sitting here once every week, every 2 weeks, talking with excellent people about important things. And yeah, I'm stoked to be doing these again.
so glad to hear it. It just feels so like surreal to go back to like where it all started, really. So
On
within
live
these,
stream.
right. So within doing these, we'll be doing a live topic once a month for about a solid hour, um, discussing whatever that everybody wants to kind of hear, things that we feel like are very important on the mental health spectrum. So the whole goal is for us to do some research in our free time, answer questions on the live feed that any of you may have, or after. More than welcome to come back and help out. So today we are discussing navigating conversations, specifically on you as an individual reaching out for help to a family member or a friend. Um, Very difficult topic to discuss, but I feel like most of us have been there before in some way, shape, or form. We want to give you keynotes and bullet points to, you know, to make sure that your voice is heard to a loved one because it's very important. And, we all have that trustworthy someone that we go to or we learn to go through, trial and error. But we'd like to kind of discuss for prepping for that conversation and bringing it up. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, just when we all have folks in our lives that'll be like, oh, if you need something, come to me, I'm always here for you, etc. And it's strange because even though when you have that reassurance, whether it's a friend, a partner, a family member, a best friend, whatever, it's still intimidating to be like, oh, I know I can reach out to you, but I'm still not going to. And it's this very odd block that we have sometimes. I mean, I'm totally guilty of it. Um, so, you know, these are just some tips that we found useful in the past that could be helpful. And I think it's important to remember too, no conversation, no two people are alike, so no two approaches to this type of stuff is going to be alike either. And it's totally cool if like what works for Dan doesn't work for me, and what works for me doesn't work for Dan. Everyone's different, everyone's going to need support that looks different. And yeah, just trying to give you some tips and tricks to help with that.
Exactly. It's kind of most things in life that we don't realize, most of it's trial and error. And when reaching out, it can be very difficult in a trial and error, kind of like reaching out for therapy. We feel like the first time we reach out, if it gets rejected, we shouldn't be reaching out more, even if it's to someone trustworthy and we care about and they love us back. But sometimes, even they might not be in the headspace and we don't know. We really can't tell. And it's best we work alongside that and go through it instead of avoiding, because the last thing you need to be doing is bottling up all that and saving it for another unexpected time. So one of the key first things is with prepping for a conversation is checking in beforehand to ensure support is available. A key point in that is sometimes we reach out when we are fully emotional, when we're hit with it, and it's not that that's not okay. But if we don't have that specific friend yet, or that we know we can reach out to, who can be there for us, even when we they might be busy or going through something, it's best to kind of reach out and pretty much state, hey, going through a hard time right now. Do you have any free time within this today or the upcoming week to not have it go too long without being spoken, to make sure that your voice is heard and you can decompress. That is, a huge factor of having friends and family that we can trust. So that's like one of the first things, because we really get scared when we reach out, and we really get worried that we'll be judged. And, it's hard to just kind of wipe that off our shoulder, because, we're all human, we're all going through something, and we don't want our voice to not be heard. So, one huge thing is to just simply reach out with a text, even give not a warning text, but in a way, I was trying to find a better word, to say, hey, do you have any time to talk this week? Or can I talk to you and just kind of decompress for 5 minutes? I don't want to ruin your day, but I got to let this out to someone. Nothing needs to be bottled up. So that's one of the very first things to look out for.
Yeah, and I think it's always good just to, like you're saying, to kind of give an indication of what you would like to talk about. Whether that's, hey, I'm in a really, really bad spot. Do you have just a minute for me? Or even just saying, do you have some time today? It's not an emergency. I just need to talk. So, because if we're going to somebody we care about and we say, hey, do you have time to talk? Or can we talk? I think everyone at some point just seeing, can we talk? It's like, oh boy, it's just that dread. Sometimes can get you anxious, or you might be uncomfortable. You might be scared. You might be bothered. You're not really sure how to react. So sometimes just saying, hey, it's not an emergency, or I really do need support. It's always good. It's just communication. Any bit helps. And I think it's also important to remember too, as the one who might be approached, if somebody comes to you and says, hey, do you have time? And say, maybe you're at work, you're at school, you have family to take care of, you're going through your own stuff. It's okay if you don't have time. Establishing boundaries is also very important in a conversation. And yes, you might want to be there for the person reaching out to you, but we all have stuff going on. And I think it is okay to say, hey, I don't have the time, or I can't give you my full attention, because you're assumingly, if somebody close is coming to you and saying, hey, can you support me? If you don't have the time to support them, it's okay to say, hey, I really want to be there for you, but can I get in touch with you tonight after I get home from work and I have a minute to chill? Or, hey, can we talk about this tomorrow? So it is okay to establish boundaries. I think it's also totally valid too, to say, hey, I can't be there for you. Do you want resources? Have you texted the tech support line? Have you called this crisis line? That's still a way of supporting. It's like
Correct.
indirect support. You can't be there, but you're saying, hey, these excellent people who work at these crisis lines can help you as well.
And that's a huge point that I didn't even think about, because sometimes we sometimes want an open ear of someone we love and trust, but it doesn't mean that somebody on a crisis text line or a text line of any kind in this matter can't support in the same level. They don't know you to the core, but it's still a voice. The whole goal is that it not be just your own, but yours to someone else, and that.
Yeah, I actually volunteer with the crisis text line. And I mean, obviously we're, not going to divulge our conversations, but the line is there for any kind of predicament, any kind of crisis. So it could be, you might be having a really tough day and you just need to kind of, oh my God, darn coworker, what the heck, or it might be something serious. So, just because it's called a crisis line doesn't mean that you need to be in a high risk crisis situation. I think of the word crisis as a very fluid sort of term. I, kind of associate it with just not feeling like yourself. It might just be after you found out that you didn't do as well on that test as you hoped you would, or it might be a bit of a dire situation. So, whatever you're going through is valid. Don't think, oh, somebody has it worse than me, they deserve to get support. It's like, no, you deserve support too. So whether that's from a friend or from one of these crisis lines, go for it.
Exactly that. That's why they're there. They're a key factor, a keynote that not just us specifically, but many mental health resources are really posting about more, knowing that their availability is 24/7 across the board, and that is amazing. It really is, and that's something that um, everybody's trying to push more, knowing that that is available.
Yes. What else? What comes after that? We have boundaries. You want to take this next one? The
Yeah,
third
so
one?
establishing boundaries. This is one I've always had hard on myself with explaining, not personally going through because sometimes it's just natural that way. But I definitely say connecting, establishing boundaries, and acknowledging your capabilities and what is in your control and beyond your control definitely kind of go align when it comes to it. Definitely focus on what you're in control of, um, because we are in more control, especially when establishing boundaries than we realize. There is obviously many key factors that through our lives every day we are not in control of, but the biggest is our response. And especially when someone is helping you with a family member, if you are going to them, they want to be there for you in every step of the way. But as strong as it is to take, don't always take everything they're saying personal. Although it can be a heavy weight that you are carrying, they are doing their best. No different than somebody on a crisis text line. It's new to them. Situation, every situation is different. It's an add up of multiple things, whether through days, weeks, months, or years. Nobody understands it from you. And it's really important to realize that, there's only so much that can be perceived. And you to the core get it, but they don't. And even if you lay it all out on the table open, it sometimes isn't enough. And you want to make sure that everything is said as well and spoken as can be. Thank you, Alley Cat Beard Company. We love you guys and so happy to have you as a sponsor. It's great to have you as a family, and thanks for stopping by. We'll definitely be doing more. And if you guys or anybody have any questions, please throw them our way. We're more than happy to answer the best that we can.
So sorry, my internet was having a moment.
A little frozen?
Yeah,
Oh, you're
so I'm
fine.
just like, like when your computer's frozen and then all of a sudden it catches up with the conversation and it sounds like you're fast forwarding a tape. Like that's just exactly what happened. So
Oh, absolutely. Immediately, you're just like, wait a minute, did I miss the? Yeah, nope, whole new conversation, just a sentence later.
yes, so I apologize because this just blanked out for me for a moment. So
You're
um
good.
yes, so we didn't move on from acknowledging capabilities, right? I don't mean to be breaking the
No,
fourth wall here,
absolutely.
but okay. I
You're
just want to
fine.
make sure I didn't miss. But yeah, I think what's also important to recognize too with acknowledging your capabilities, somebody might come to you with, needing support for something you might not be able to support them on, whether you just don't, maybe you're not comfortable with the what they're coming to you with, or maybe you just don't know how to respond, like say for instance, friend A and B are in a fight and friend A comes to you and says, "Oh, friend B, what a guy." And you're like, "I don't feel comfortable getting in the middle of this." You want to still be supportive, but you also have to acknowledge what are you comfortable with, engaging with in a conversation. And it might be something heavy that somebody's coming to you with. And, to it's okay to say maybe you're not the best person to go to. That's where these resources come in. Hey, can I help you find the right person to go to, whether it's maybe another friend in your circle, a family member, a crisis line, or helping them to find more long-term support. We can always handle all only there we go handle so much. So I mean, even on you know even if you yourself have dealt with something that's similar, you might not be comfortable, you know, engaging and supporting because maybe it just isn't a healthy situation for you to be in. And that's okay. That's establishing boundaries and it's saying, are you capable of you got to keep your own well-being in mind when you're supporting others. Uh, yeah, I lost my train of thought to that.
You're fine.
Goodness.
I think we always like feel like we need to have this flow going,
Yes.
and it's never always going to be there, and that's okay on any part of life. A few key factors within that are going in with an open mind, listening and asking questions. That's a key one. Not, any questions that really come to mind. You never want to leave any unspoken, even if they aren't, per se getting answered, because that friend or family member or even a hotline can do their best to get you the answers. Assure that the speaker that you are remaining present. That's definitely a key one because um, being what the situation can be, it's a very emotional factor, no matter what. And, you know, definitely that fine line of breathing techniques while doing so, like me going to the dentist a few weeks back, where I kid you not, I do the breathing exercises. I do the breathing exercises before entering when I'm in the waiting room. Like I'm not like that. There's that underlying worry,
Yeah.
but that's a natural worry. I've always said, and Robin knows this, that like if you're not, if you're going in with too much confidence of anything, especially things like this, with no worry or anxiety, it's too much that you're thinking will work out for the better, and it's best to kind of go as much with a logical approach that you can, though emotion will be there, which is cool and completely fine because that's natural. Um, it's just noting that the other end that you can communicate the best that you can, and being there, especially on a phone call, because um, it can be a lot when not in person, and we usually want in person with any form of communication more than anything. But there's that level where it might be a call after work, and though it can be a hard topic, whatever it may be, still want the other line to know that, like, yeah, I'm still here, just letting it out. It's like, please do. It's natural. We don't think crying or decompressing in any way is, we bottle that up, especially, I know it's always, the classic be a man, for the men, or feeling as though, certain people are too emotional. And it's like, no, we're all different. We all are. It's best to acknowledge that and be all right with it.
It's what makes us human. I think everyone has experienced some range of emotions at some point in their life. So to say that you've never felt, it's okay to say you're feeling upset. Um, and it's okay as the listener, going back to, listen and ask questions. Sometimes when you might be in a little bit of an unhealthy situation and you're unloading and you might just be saying things, you're the person you're listening to might be saying things as if you understand everything, everyone they're talking about, every experience. It's okay to stop them and be like, hey, who's this, or what did you mean by that? Because usually what I do is I'll stop and I'll be like, can you explain this to me? I just want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly or I'm following you right. So it's also showing that you, the listener, are like legitimately invested in what's going on, and you're not just being like, that's nice, I get what you're saying, and like that kind of very blind conversation. Go
And
for it. You look like you
that's,
have a thought.
no, I love it because that so goes back to the start where it was just like you're going to go through the trial and errors of it, even if it's someone that is willing to listen. You might also realize, not that, it's been a factor for me, so that's why I'm willing to say it. Doesn't mean for you, but how you've always felt like that person will listen, and then you realize when it's in a crisis mode, not, the worst, but in a level you need to be heard, that it is exactly what Robin just said. It is the exactly, yep, no, I've been there. It's like, no, don't. That's funny enough. The next thing is use mutual experiences to create a dialogue. It's great to, and I love that and Robin wrote this up, and I love it because my brain would say comparing past experiences, which, kid you not, we usually don't want to hear. Um, it sounds, you'd think that knowing that somebody else has gone through it has been helpful. At the same time, it's not always the greatest to compare at that level of experiences, knowing that this situation could be worse, and that person wants to know that they're being heard, not, you know, compared to something that already happened to you that you hope that they have just as behind.
Yeah, it's I think I have it written there as have a conversation, not a competition. I think everyone
Ooh.
has been in that kind of situation where you approach somebody with wanting to chat about something, and then they share similar experiences, but then it almost seems like they're trying to show that they've had it worse, or it becomes a venting session for them and you feel very undermined. So like I think it's okay to bear in mind who may not be the best person to go to, that if you go to this person for support, it might devolve into that. You know, the so if somebody comes to you for support, I think it's okay to bring up prior experiences that you've had that might be useful, but I think it's how you go about doing it. If someone comes to you with a similar situation, you know, I've in the past said, "Oh, I have a similar experience. Do you, would would it be helpful if I tell you how I approached it, how I got through it, what helped me?" So you were acknowledging, "Oh, I've had a similar experience," but you're not going into it. You're just saying, "Do you want to know what helped me?" So like there's a way to kind of show, "Hey, same. Do you want to know what helped me?" So you're creating that mutuality. And I mean, if they want to ask more, I mean, that's for you to establish that boundary. You may not be comfortable sharing it, or you might feel comfortable doing it. It might be a bonding experience between you and the other person, but there's a very delicate way to go about sharing mutual experiences that it doesn't become a contest or you know, hey, I've had it worse than you, because that doesn't help anybody.
No, it doesn't. It really doesn't. Really nicely said. It's we another thing that's just naturally we do. We compare, and it's a weird thing because someone has good intent when comparing, and but most don't. It's so natural that it's like not what I need to hear at this point. That's great. And then there's also the underlying layer of I hope you're over whatever that situation is. Not that it has to be rushed, but if it's a comparison from quite some time ago from the past, leave it there. Um, Acknowledging what is causing discomfort in that moment and work backwards towards the root of the matter. Every time I read one of these, Robin, I swear that I'm like, wow, what a key bullet point. It's like, no, they're all key bullet points. It's okay if obviously one isn't, if one is skipped in the process, but really solid. Um, Acknowledging what is causing discomfort. It's so easy to get off topic. Um, we do it constantly in conversations. We just have like so many things we want to say in our head. Even if that friend's reaching out, we want to respond with something of, are we still having dinner tomorrow? Or are we still? And it's like, kind of backtrack, go backwards and realize, you know what? I'll take the blame for that. Let's go back to what you are actually here for instead of tracking onto something else for the next 10, 15 minutes and not acknowledging what the whole point of this conversation is in the first place.
Yeah, and it's easy to like you said, get off track, but always try to keep in your mind, because I don't know if anyone who's tuning in has experienced this, where you're chatting with somebody and like that brief like blip of like calm comes in, where it's like you find something that you both like laugh about, and the conversation seems like it's going towards that like kind of decompressing stage, and it seems like it's open for more casual conversation, but you don't want to forget like why this conversation is happening. And I think too, if somebody comes with what's been bothering them, try and find what started that feeling. There can be a direct, cause and effect. Why are you feeling really upset today? Well, I failed my test. I didn't study. Cause effect. But other times, I mean, some days just you wake up and you feel like garbage, and there's no real reason why. And I think that's totally okay. We're human. We're not always supposed to be waking up on a high. Sometimes we wake up on a low, and that's just how it goes. Um, but other times you might have to kind of dig a little bit. Like, did anything happen today that's making you feel uneasy? Is there something that you're thinking about, so I mean, there's ways to go about it. I usually try and avoid asking why questions, because I feel like that's very like interrogating, like, why did this happen? Why do you not feel happy today? So go for it.
And going on with that really quick is how we just explained why too. Like like a good half of the time we just explained it. So to hear, well, why did this? And it's like, I just let you know. It's great. It's crazy how often that happens that we don't realize whether we space out or whatever it may be. It's like, no, I just told you the root cause. Um, and that's going back to acknowledging and taking those steps.
Yeah, and I think if the person you're talking to asks you like a question that maybe you have addressed, it's not the matter of they're not paying attention. Sometimes, I've done this where I get so wrapped up in the conversation that I forget like key points. And it's not like a matter of, oh, I'm ignoring you. It's just we've unloaded so much. I'm like, I have to backtrack now and figure out what's going on. So yeah, it's a two-way street. The listener is doing a lot of work, the speaker is doing a lot of work. And it should be mutual, and if you feel that you're not getting that support, I mean, I've done this before where I'll cut off a conversation mid sentence almost, because I could tell the person I'm talking to is just like not there. And I'm just like, I'll ask. I'll be like, are you here for me? And if they say no, or you can kind of tell that they're not, I mean, you'd rather know than, spill your heart out and just get a, I'm sorry with an emoji, because that's just like, were you listening? That's all I can get.
That's very valid. It's very, very valid. Very true. Just a reminder, all of this is valid, whatever it may be, not even what we're discussing, but with what you're going through. Um, One of the biggest things that I always kind of like keep in my head is feel what you need to feel. Um, but I already forgot what I love to say.
Feel what you need to feel.
Feel what you need to feel, but don't let it control you. Very quickly, we let it control ourselves in the situation, no matter how dire it can be. Coming back to it and kind of, a huge thing is writing it out. Even, I journal daily. I really do. And it's been helping me a ton. To simply, a huge method that we've talked about before is writing out what you're feeling. It also gives the listener or someone you're meeting up with a more clarification. And that's kind of maybe something to maybe not do in the moment, but coming back to within the next day or later in the week, because it's kind of like our own bullet points, but a brief synopsis on how we were feeling. And although we might kind of look back ourselves, because I have before when doing this and be like, did I really felt that low, or I really felt like that? And I'm like, I must have. I'm not gonna, write a lie to myself. But really, absolute great methods to have.
I love that quote. Don't write that lie to yourself. I don't know. I feel like that should be like a song title or something. Or like some kind of motto for like something. I don't know. You ever just hear a phrase and you're like, that's something. That's a title for something.
Usually when I love that, and thank you, because that was actually on the spot. Usually when I think of a phrase, I think of it, naming it into a ska band, because most of the ones I think of on the spot or talk to with someone, I'm like, sounds like a ska band, or sounds like a song title for a post-hardcore band because it's so lengthy, or a pop punk band. It's like a complete sentence.
Goodness, but no, I mean, but to your point, like I like the idea of writing. I mean, also to maybe anyone you're going to for support maybe can't be there for you. At least get all that stuff out of your head and onto paper. That's still a way of releasing whatever's going on. Yes, it might not be the most productive kind of way and it might be most helpful, but also sometimes keeping everything swimming in your head versus actually seeing it on paper. For me, sometimes there's like, it helps me realize what's going on. Like I do it a lot with, scheduling stuff. I'm like, oh, how much do I have to do today? And I feel like I have so much going on. And then I write it down. I'm like, oh, that's only 3 things I really need to do. Why am I making this into a bigger deal? So get your thoughts out and then look at them. And sometimes looking can help you make a roadmap to what those first steps should be.
Massively. I'm a dire fan of lists. Hey, Jay, glad you could join, and thank you so much, man. Hope you are doing well today, brother. Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I write down like lists after lists, like way too much, and I hope one day I get to them. But even that way of, like you said, most of the things that can bother us that is weighing heavy, um, we use too much of an emotional approach when sometimes using a logical approach is, a huge thing that we need. And within doing that, writing it down with what we're feeling, but, very clear. I don't feel like I feel like journaling and writing down what we're feeling, especially in moments, is something that's not avoided always on purpose, but such a useful tool that we all have. Though it can be difficult, at least hey, this is what I was feeling. Hey, it's not a bad idea when talking with that friend or family member in the distant future, near future, hopefully not distant.
Yeah.
We don't want distant. Another one is, which Robin knows me for this, and everybody that sees me post all the daily affirmations at night knows that I live off of this, and that small steps are still valid steps. When you reach out, whether or not the friend can't at the time, depending on their own situation with family, friends, or work, do know that you're even reaching out that first time, you never have to do that one step again. Although it sounds crazy, I live off of that and I love it because great Frank Turner quote is, every step you'll take is another step. Every step you take is another step you'll never have to take again. Because if you've done it, if you've reached out once, whether or not that friend could, take that step back and give your pat on the shoulder. Give your shoulder a pat for the fact that you actually did that. Whether you might not get a conversation in that day or that night, reaching out the next day with having a clear head can be such ideal, and know that you were able to do it. You at least got a response. Hey, now's not a good time. I'm so sorry, what you're going through. Let me get back to you tomorrow. If that friend made that promise, maybe give them a reminder, midday. Hey, do you get time in the afternoon? It'd be great to talk after work. Really need it with this situation. And I obviously, as Robin and I discussed prior, every situation is clearly different. So some do need to be talked about right away. And as yourself usually that it's a situation where taking right away and taking action for, they're not always have to be, but you do know, I hope you do, when it is, and to take that next step into moving forward. And like Robin mentioned, reaching out to a crisis text line if it's at that level. That's why they're available. But if it's something of, if it's, I'm not saying getting cut from a job or a divorce or anything, but if it's a heavy level that can wait, though it is heavy, just take that breather, take that walk. Most days after work, I even take a long walk. If I'll sometimes reach out to Robin after a long day, and sometimes I'm like, you know what? It's 9 p.m. Situation's not dire. It's not that bad. I'm going to keep moving forward. Come back to it tomorrow.
Yeah. I mean, I think everyone's done it where you have that text, all ready to go, or you have the phone number ready and you're sitting there, you're like, well, should I do it? No, I'll be okay. And, sometimes just initiating that, it takes a lot, and I don't think people give themselves enough credit on how much strength it takes just to say, hey, can we chat when you have a chance? I mean, it does take a lot. And I'm straight out, I will mention, acknowledge I am very stubborn about doing it. I rarely do it. So we'll air 5 through the computer.
It's funny because it's terrible that we are.
I know.
with how close we all are, and yet it just feels like this. And it's always like I can wait for a response, like I'm quick message at work, and then it's like, yeah, I'm not going to do it, and there's no reason for that. And I'm right there with you, Robin. I am stubborn as hell. It's in my blood, probably literally, not just metaphorically. And I'm definitely terrible at that too. So anybody else like that, you're not alone. Um, like we said, taking that small step is still valid. Um, and not just valid, but like necessary, because that first step is still a step. Um, you think it's not enough sometimes because it might not get the progress you want in that moment, but it is still progress no matter how small.
It's funny. There's this. I think it's called Chats with the Void. This person
Ooh.
does these really nice, like kind of existential comics. And there was a comic about it was two characters talking, and one said, "I'll never be good enough," or "It'll never be enough," and like their like inverse of themselves is like, well, what is enough? Enough is this thing that we keep pushing like further and further away from ourselves obtaining. But really, like, take a step back. Like, what is enough? Because I think we're all capable, all guilty of saying that, well, that wasn't good enough or it won't be enough. Well, what is enough? If enough is reaching out to that friend and sending that one text message, that is excellent. If enough is finding long-term support, that is enough. So I think we need, I'm going to be guilty of it, but I think we all have this idea of what enough is, what good enough is, and that it's this grandiose kind of thing, like running through the finish line at a marathon. And sometimes just being enough is, tuning into an excellent, chat session and learning on how to navigate a conversation and how to reach out to your friends or browsing the resources that are out there. Sometimes that's enough.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole, hey, no, perfectly said. That's why these are here. That's why we're so happy and glad to be doing them again. And like we mentioned a little bit before, if anybody has any questions during this or when they watch this later, whether it's a day or a week or a month, we'll definitely get the notification about your question or comment. Always love to hear. Seriously, doing that is what keeps us going. Um, Another key factors are addressing silence,
Ooh,
right?
yeah.
There's always that awkward silence with conversations, especially in a dire situation, no matter how big or small. First one is assure the speaker that you are listening. Um, Covered this one a little bit prior. Definitely let them know, then acknowledge that, like, no matter, that you are present, that you are there, especially being on the other line, no matter who you are reaching out to. It's very important. Obviously, very emotional, and the factors at play can vary with that, but it's definitely good to just even speak very little to let them know on the other end that, yep, I'm still here. I promise I'm listening. Can be difficult to respond, but I am present.
I think silences are natural. There's always going to be a lull. I'm sure, everyone's been hanging out with like somebody they're super close with and they're having a fun time. And then that conversation, just for whatever reason, like it just gets very quiet, but there's no real reason for it. But, you're out, you're having fun, whatever. But silence is natural. It doesn't mean that the other side is not listening. Sometimes they're maybe waiting for you and they're waiting to see what you want to say next. Maybe you're kind of just having that mutual moment of just like taking like a mental breather in this conversation to say like, okay, where's this going to go? So silences can be uncomfortable, very uncomfortable, but it's not a sign that nobody's there to support you. The other side isn't listening, or on the flip side, it's not suggesting that the one who's speaking is waiting for you to come up with some huge like revolutionary answer that'll solve all their problems. It's natural to have a little bit of a pause. So I wouldn't interpret silence as being a bad thing. It could be a point to
No,
regroup.
well, and exactly. I think there's many things that I definitely want Robin and myself that I definitely know that we've acknowledged a lot in this, which is good, is like how much all this is natural. Obviously there's stigma behind everything, But Robin and I wouldn't be doing what we're here today if we didn't break our own stigmas in our lives to do this. Like, kid you not, Robin and I are not speakers to a level, but but here it is. Give ourselves the credit.
I told you, hypocrite. I said I was, and here you go. Here's
Uh,
a
I am as stubborn as yes. Couldn't think of anything that's stubborn on the spot. But no, it really honestly a lot of these, most if not all, are more natural than we think. It's breaking that stigma within ourselves and our lives with pushing forward. So just giving that clear reminder that you know that the other end's listening and that you are there for them.
Yeah, you can even use silences to give a point of reassurance. You can tell, the person who's speaking that, remind them that it took a lot of strength for them to even have this conversation. Or, just tell them, hey, thanks for trusting me with this. Because it's tough. And, sometimes these little affirmations are a good way to fill that silence and maybe start to calm things a bit, especially if you went from a moment of being very emotionally charged. I don't know why, but sometimes when I get into a position where I'm not feeling really like myself, I almost feel like wound up and electrified. I don't know how else to describe it, but that's just the one term I've always been going back to. So having that brief moment where, someone would say, hey, you're doing great. This isn't easy to talk about. You can find those little affirmations to fill that silence naturally, as opposed to sounding like, I don't know, trying to find the right word for it, but you can fill those silences. Point being, it just takes, just that one little thing. Hey, thank you for reaching out to me, or I'm glad you did. I wouldn't say to use that silence as a point to be like, so what did you have for dinner last night? Like, you got to kind of test the waters and not see it as a point for like jokes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sometimes it's not the greatest to how do I word it? Like you don't always want to fill in that void if it's not on topic, not even just in dire situations, but sometimes always, because then like before the conversation leads elsewhere, topics off charts, you want to keep it at the core meaning of why you're there. Um, Another thing, switching positions on the person who is getting reached out to, remind the friend or family member or individual that is reaching out to you for how much strength it takes to reach out for help. Um, though this is acknowledged a lot across the board, I really feel as though I think we both do that it isn't no I've always been someone saying it's never said enough. It's just like, we do not say I love you enough. We do not say, hey, appreciate the help, no matter how small of the random act of kindness it can be. Definitely let the individual know that like how much it took because it's such a weight off of their shoulders. That takes off so many bricks to know that cool, I did the right thing. It's that little reassurance that sometimes that validation that we don't crave, we just want to know. Deep down, most of the time we do, but it's hearing it from someone that it's crazy, but it seriously makes the difference. Been there.
It does. Where are we? Sorry. Um, no, it's not easy, And as we said at the beginning, even if it's somebody who we know is there for us through thick and thin, it's still it can still be tough to do it, you know. So little validations can really go a long way, especially if you're in a moment that was very charged up at one point.
Reading the comments.
Yes, let's
Thank
read
you.
comments.
Always love comments. We love the interactions. It makes
Yeah.
seriously, it's a thrill. Even, anything. John, so good to hear from you. Freaking love you, brother. Thank you so much. Um, Rob and I love doing these. We are so glad to be getting back on track. And doing these once a month, if not, some pre-recorded things for everyone. So thank you, brother. I cannot wait to see you as soon as freaking possible. Sorry, Jason, never truly had a circle that would listen, just a crowd full of friends who always seemed to be all about themselves. So I would always be the one doing all the listening and reaching out. But once I would slow the rushing out, so
Reaching out.
reaching out, thank you, and listening, it all seemed to disappear. Um, Sorry to hear that, man. I feel like that is such a it's always per individual, but I definitely get where you're coming from. Um, Especially, you know, growing older, having a core group is always important. But definitely at a younger age, it's difficult to know who, whether in a small group or a large group. There's no doubt by at all. It really is hard to know who. And damn, wow, that
Yeah.
hits. I get it. Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking sometimes, but sometimes your best friend isn't the person you can go to. It just I think in a way it's good to know who you can't go to as much as it is who you could, because you want to make sure that whoever's there is going to hear you out, support you, and sometimes it can't be the people that we think it is. Like, if you have a really excellent relationship with your, say your parents, but there are certain things you can't go to them with. I mean, I think that's natural. There are friends we can't go to with certain things with, it's good to know who could support us. And, even if this is a person that you support all the time, maybe they can't be there for you. It sucks. It does. But you, for me, I'd rather know than not know.
That's a good perspective that I don't think we think about often. Um, I think mainly because we don't think in that thought process or we don't want to in a way, but sometimes singling out what sometimes doing the opposite, like Robin just mentioned, is actually necessary. And that's why, what we said at the beginning is like it all varies and figuring out what path we need to take can be a trial and error situation. And I've definitely done what Robin said as many times is going the opposite end.
Even the listeners need to be listened to too.
There's a reason why therapists go to therapists.
There is.
Exactly. Even they need to maybe not let out what they heard, but let out their own long days as well. Another thing with addressing silence is offer thanks for their willingness to open up with you. Love that you wrote with you instead of to you. Sometimes that's all it takes, but that is honestly right on point. Um, just like reminding them with reaching out for help, offering thanks, and letting them know how much you appreciate um, their presence in the moment, you reaching out or them listening, whichever side you're on. Um, it's like it's like not I don't want to word it as like a safety factor, but it's a good reassurance level that like, hey, it makes all the difference, especially in that moment with whatever heavy weight there is to know like, um, hey, it took a lot. Thank you for just being here, be it 5 minutes or an hour and a half conversation. Because sometimes 5 minutes is really all we need. It's usually what I need, though I
Yeah.
ramble.
Yeah, too. I mean, I think we all have that one thing that we might feel ashamed to open up to, or we're not sure how our friends will react to it. Um, so being able to trust somebody who you trust with something that heavy or new, um, that takes a lot, because we can expect, oh, if they were able to help me, put air in my bike tire, they'll be willing to help me put air in my car tire. Sometimes that might not always link up. So to be able to trust somebody with anything, it still takes a lot. I mean, I have my core group that I know I can go to with anything, but there are still certain things where I'm like, I don't know if I'm ready to open up about this because I don't know how they'll react. Even though in my head, I know they'll be there 100%. But,
It's
just
also
still, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, you were talking around him. You're fine.
No.
No, but that's that's such a good thing to say because um not things on the main topic of what we're talking about, but some things are best. I don't want to say left unsaid because that sounds like then it's not on the not reaching out part, but with what you just said, sometimes I don't want to be like it ruins the effect, but like there are some things where even though you'll get like that listening ear from that friend in your core group, sometimes it's like if I already know the answer in those specific situations, do I really need to reach out about it? There's always like that back and forth. We don't reach out enough, but then sometimes it's not that it's not worth reaching out, but do we have to? Like, can it just be brought up in a casual conversation? Again, everything varies per individual situation. It's just going through what you have to do to hopefully find the end result and answers you're looking for.
Yes.
So, closing the conversation. Let the speaker guide the dialogue to a close. Ooh.
This could be tough.
This can be, I know, it immediately hit me like, ooh.
Because if whoever you're speaking with is in a very uncomfortable situation, and I'm guilty of this when I was younger, I would always want someone around if I wasn't feeling well. So being able to quote end a conversation and part ways was a lot for me because I wasn't ready to be on my own and sit with whatever it was we were just talking about. So you kind of have to let the other person start to close it up. I mean, some conversations might be 5 minutes, some of them might be 5 hours. You kind of don't know, and I think we've all had that situation where a conversation just goes on longer, like for a long time, and there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you need to have those longer dialogues. But I would caution against kind of being abrupt and saying, hey, can we wrap this up? I'm hungry and I want to eat dinner, because that's just going to take whatever progress you might have gotten to in that conversation and throws it.
Yeah, man. It's crazy, and I have like no problem being open about it and saying it, but like it's crazy. It sounds like sometimes just a hug is like all you fucking need. And I don't and I can say that fully confidently that I probably feel like that way every day after moving out of my folks' place 2 years ago. It just feels like maybe not even from them, but like in general, like just like that reassurance through a hug is just sometimes like all you need, even if it's a coworker at work. I seriously have like a coworker at work where I'm like, can I just get a fucking hug? Like, I don't even, seriously, and she's done it with me. Like, I don't even need to say what it's about, yet she's so open about herself, and I'm open about me. I'm definitely someone who's probably more open than most, but I've got nothing to hide, and no big deal if I did. But doing this kind of stuff, if that's what helps, it helps. But it's crazy how sometimes just a hug and just to like cry covers it covers so much. It might not give you the answers, but like it's crazy the more I've realized lately how much I'm bottling up without realizing I'm bottling it up. Like I don't have the solution to the situation, but and I feel like I'm working through it. And then sometimes you might be, because I definitely am someone that's been working through situations more than bottling it up. But there are times where I'm like, damn, I need to let this out. It's crazy, but it's so true. It's so true.
It is. I mean, even though I try to be, keep a tough kid vibe going all the time, sometimes that hug is really just all you need.
It's
and
yeah, go ahead. No, you're speaking.
I think what we're hitting at too is that how that conversation wraps up is going to look different. Some people might, the conversation, the verbal exchange might just kind of segue into, okay, thank you for being here, hang up, go on your separate ways. But other times, some people might just need a hug. Some people might just want to sit down and watch their favorite movie or go for a drive with some music playing. So, how that conversation wraps up might not be like a conversation in terms of verbal exchange. It might be an action. It might be just staying together. So, being receptive to how the other side wants to close up, I think is important too. I mean, obviously within your capabilities, if they're like, hey, let's go to California right now, that might be I don't know if we can do that, but maybe we can save up for it. You know what I mean? So it's being receptive to what's going to help this person, reach that calm after having an intense conversation.
On the dot. Next bullet point is creating a short-term plan. I feel like this is definitely one that is discarded naturally too often. Kind of like the well-known 5-year plan, writing out where you want to be within a 5-year radius. I actually have one that I never filled out. I just found, kid you not, an hour ago. But sometimes, just like in that journaling level, like doing that within your journaling, it's good to have even if the plan isn't set or in motion, writing it down kind of makes it in motion, because obviously you have to put the work and effort to get it moving, but writing it down makes it just kind of like finalizes it, knowing that, like, you know what, it's not just a thought, I've written it down, let's take it going, and making a step-by-step progress on how to handle the situation, no matter how deep or dire. Because sometimes, I can't tell you how many times I think of something in a process form and I'll forget one key element. Now, that key element might not make the difference, but it also might make the difference. So it's worth writing down as you go. I keep a notes app in my phone, literally topic wise at all times. So if I need something to remember, hey, I need to jot that down, especially on something that I'm needing to reach out about, I have it available. I can revert back, even if it might not be in my physical notes. I know, hey, I forgot I should write that down in this, or I should type all that up that I wrote down to revert back to when needed.
Yeah, and I think in terms of creating that short-term plan, that goes into the next bullet point of emphasizing and practicing self-care. I think those two are intertwined, where whatever that quote self-care looks like, that might be your short-term plan, might be to go put on a favorite movie or to check out some resources that they may have given you, or it might be just to go to bed, so everyone's short-term plan slash self-care is going to be different. What works for you in that moment, it might look different every day. There's nothing wrong with that.
Gosh, no. It's okay that even if a plan isn't, even if it's in motion, doesn't mean that things don't change. I think we need that. I still think that needs to be acknowledged more in anything, that going hell back to a note is like, you're only in control of so much. And, you're only going to get, there's only so much in that line where you, trying to find that thought that disappeared. You're only getting control so much, but more than anything, as I just repeated 3 times, wow, I keep losing it, Robin. It's gone. That thought's gone.
Plans can change.
Plans can change. Nope, still not there.
Goodness. I'm gonna try and piggyback off of that at least. No, you might sit there and say, "Hey, I want my short-term plan slash self-care for tonight is to watch favorite movie." You might sit down with that movie and then decide I want to do something else, or I'm just not in the mood to watch the movie. I'm just going to go to bed. Or you might not feel well and still feel okay, and you might reach back out for support. Be okay with telling yourself, this isn't working for me right now. What else could I come up with? I would say, I'd ideally at least have one kind of objective to, on that short-term list slash self-care list. Try and put two on there. You know, you might want to ask whoever you're speaking with that's guiding you through this conversation, hey, can I reach back out to you if I'm still not feeling okay? That's okay to say.
100%. I think we don't acknowledge how much a changing of course, no matter what's written out or what we want to do, is necessary or wouldn't be flowing that way. Because sometimes what we have written down makes sense, but then when we try to do it, it's not, it might not have worked out, but it might not always work out. And to kind of keep going on that path forward is something to acknowledge and go along with. And I love that that directs us right into the next bullet point, which is practice self-care. That's perfect. Unless you already jumped in and I was blind. I probably was.
I was trying to interweave them, but we can go more into that.
No, you did well. I went over my own head.
You did not. Absolutely not.
Well, then go straight into offering resources. Going at the start with what Robin mentioned with the crisis text line. There's actually a lot more apps today within these past 3 years because of the world changing that are so specific with your needs. And if you can literally, there's certain apps that depending on if you're someone that definitely goes through like, a valley of moods, that you can actually go through a sequence like down to the core level of, simple emotions to deep. And it'll give you like a more guiding process on maybe where to take the next step to, or a recommendation. Honestly, it sounds crazy, but simply typing in mental health resources in your Google Play or your Apple Store seriously makes a difference. I definitely try to go through once a week and see what are new, what people have. During even my work days when I'm really stressed, I'll throw on a podcast. And that's a huge go-to of me. I've got 3 main podcasts where if it's just like one of those days, sometimes I just need to have not my own voice going through my head, nor a conversation with a coworker, but, simply just the talking of, and that helps definitely like ease the mood and, have me take a step away from the current situation and come back with a more logical approach.
Yeah, and I think that's great. It's not avoiding whatever it is that's going on. It's helping you get to that point where you can be like, okay, thing that's bothering me, let's talk this out. So, but yeah, there's so many resources out there. I think it's incredible, and it can be a little overwhelming at times because you're like, oh, which one do I use? If you hit that point, obviously asking friends is a great way to start. Say, hey, do you use any of these? What works for you? Also, reaching out to any of these crisis lines, like the text line or any of the call lines, and just asking, hey, do you have any recommendations? Because most of these crisis lines have up-to-date resources, i.e., if something is maybe inactive, it wouldn't be offered. So it's okay to if you're just reaching out to these crisis lines just to say, hey, can I get some resources? You are totally allowed to do that, whether it's national lines like the suicide prevention line, that's crisis text line, or maybe your community has its own individual resource center, like a crisis line. I've done that in the past where I wasn't sure where to direct somebody. So I called my local crisis line and said, hey, do you have any resources for X? I'm trying to help somebody. You could do that. Most of the time they don't. A lot of crisis lines, they'll genuinely ask for your name just as a way of being able to make it more personal so they know who they're talking about. But if you're not comfortable, you are allowed to say, I don't want to disclose my name. You can always use, a different name if you're not comfortable with it. But, that's another reason these lines are there too, is just to even just provide resources. And it's excellent to reach out to reach out on behalf of other people.
Massively. I think that's so underrated. I think, gosh, that's definitely a discussion that I could go deep into. But I won't. But it's so true on how, I mean, no, like how many times I've actually like a friend's recommended something to me or they've mentioned something and I'm like, huh, I never thought of it that way, or I never thought of that thing that they might be going through that they were gratefully willing to be open to me about. And I'll dig in a little bit and be like, wow, I've never heard of this before. And I've gone down through rabbit holes on evenings trying to not help the friend, not on a professional level, obviously, but more on a, you know, I can help more than most because I'm willing to take that time out of the day and take that step to say, hey, I did some research. I'm so sorry this is what you're going through. Have you ever thought about this? I read up on this the other day. And them knowing like that you spent some time going further than just hearing the conversation, um, gives so many other perspectives, so many more resources. Like it opens up an endless door of doors that are just worth opening up. And that's great that, we have that availability these days.
Yeah, and that's just like, in my opinion, one of the most excellent things a friend can do is take your conversation and keep looking into it because they care that much to say, oh, I don't, I've never heard of X before. I'm going to look it up so I can best, understand to support you in the future. I mean, that's true friendship. That is true friendship to do.
Very much. I still have friends today that have done that for me. And I'm so grateful that they were willing to take that outer perspective than my own current situation to understand where I'm coming from. Because sometimes, we think we're laying it all out on the table. And even if we do, it doesn't clarify it. It's still giving one perspective, and that's our own, but that's also their perception of it. So it's this crazy effect. But going bigger into research and digging deep into what can help out someone is such a game changer. And though it can be tedious and hard, if you're able to and would like to, I highly recommend doing that when a friend does open up to you. To end this on a killer note, love the checking in post conversation, be it later in the afternoon if it was a morning conversation, later in the week if they are on vacation, something happened, reach out when they get, the day after they get back, whatever it may be. Definitely give them a call or a text, a little nudge to know that, hey, I'm still here. Um, would love to catch up with you soon. Sorry for what you're still going through. I hope it has eased up a bit. Um, I do those little reminder to friends more than I don't even realize I do them anymore because um, sometimes it's not always about having a further discussion or conversation. Sometimes it really is just simply knowing someone's there. Because we know sometimes to the core that nobody can help me. Not on like a dire situation level, but in many situations, it is on us. And, nobody ever wants to always hear that. But going through and breaking that stigma is how we get to the next light in our lives.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be a very long conversation, that check in. It could just be the text. Hey, just wanted to check in on you. I'm still here. If you need to talk, let me know. That's it. I think that goes above and beyond the fact that you're still thinking about whoever. You can even like let them know as that conversation's wrapping up, like, hey, I'll check up on you tomorrow, or even just asking, do you want me to check in on you? Especially if maybe the person isn't feeling much better, which sometimes happens. You might have a long conversation and the individual, the person you're talking to might still not be feeling well. That's normal. Not everything can be solved within one conversation, but it's still a valid step. And it might take a while for this person to start feeling more like themselves and just asking, like, hey, do you want me to check in on you? You also have to be okay with them saying, no, please give me space. That's boundary.
Such,
Everyone has their
yes,
boundaries.
such a solid way to end it. We definitely, hey, Richard, love you, brother. So glad to see you on. And man, I hope you're doing well. Hope to catch up with you soon too. Reach out, love to chat, brother. It's crazy how much we sometimes guard ourselves too much. But definitely, that's a good point to make when reaching out again, that sometimes that person, even someone we're close to, um, won't doesn't want to respond, won't respond, will acknowledge that they're not going to respond about the situation. And no matter how that situation is, a hard thing to sometimes grasp is it's not our job to fix it. It's on it's on them. And that's so hard to hear if you're currently going through something where yourself or having to reach out to someone, knowing how bad a situation is. um, that is on going back to the start of this, that you are not in control of that person. You've acknowledged the situation, you've reached out again, you've done pretty much just about all you can on your end. And I hate to say it, it kind of comes on you. You kind of have to be okay with it. Um, yeah, I know the situations can be very deep and very frustrating. Um, but every situation varies. Sometimes it can make situations worse. Um, we do definitely know our core groups well, like Robin said, but sometimes there are, we don't know everybody that we are close to a T. We don't, and it sucks. Um, but that's why simply just being there and giving a quick hello, stopping by, love you, hope you're well. I hope everything that happened yesterday is eased up. Let me know if you want to talk. That's a great thing to really end this on, is just letting them know um, that you are willing to talk when they are willing to, that you are present for them, but not forcing it on them. Because the more they feel obligated, the more they're either going to back away or sometimes kind of come at you in a small attack mode of, hey, I already mentioned this. Why do you keep reaching out again? I got this under control. I appreciate it, but please stop bothering. And you never know. Especially when it comes to a deep situation, it brings out a whole different side to all of us. And sometimes you just need to not take offense, as hard as that can be, and walk. Literally self-care, and be the other half, and just kind of walk away from it and be like, you know, maybe think to yourself, come back in a couple weeks and sometimes even a month. Um, but just a quick wave in as in a text or messenger, just being there really makes all the difference.
Couldn't have said it better. Give options, and it sucks, especially if you care about this person, and you might feel obligated to fix or save them. And unfortunately, we can support, we can do absolutely everything, but the other person does have to make those choices themselves. Doesn't mean we can't be there to support them, but you know there are certain things you have to be okay with, and just a casual, hey, still thinking about you, if you need help, I'm here. That's fine. You don't have to give a whole novel length of stuff.
Not by any means.
Nope.
I think that is a great note to end on.
Yes.
I want to thank everybody for joining in. If you are watching this, after hours or after this is all done, within the week, next month or two, please don't, hesitate to comment below. Let us know your thoughts that you may have, concerns, whatever it may be. Like we always mention, we're not professionals, but we've definitely been there, and our faces. We're here to help the best that we can. So please and thank you, and most importantly, thank you for stopping by. We look forward to doing many, many more of these.
Yep. Thanks again.
Take care, everyone.